Great. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the June 21st, 2021 Planning Commission meeting and go ahead and take roll call. Commissioner Heising.
Present.
Commissioner Labong.
Present.
Commissioner Mason.
Present.
Commissioner Maggio.
Present.
Vice Chair Radnich.
Present.
Chair Farzan is present and Commissioner Strom is excused tonight. With that, do we have any public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda or an upcoming agenda?
You can use the hand function, and we do have one. We do not have one. We do have one. So you can hit *9 if you're calling in, or you use the raise hand function at the bottom of the Zoom webinar screen. And I'll bring in Marianne Hoisington. She'll experience a brief outage, come back in, be able to share her video and audio. Coming in now. Hello, Marianne.
Hello, is it all right to speak now?
Please.
Okay, I'm sorry I can't get there. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for what you do, the time you spend, the effort you give. It's just very, very generous of you. I'm Marianne Hoisington. I live at 959 Hawthorne, and I've been in Lafayette since 1957. The reason I'm taking your time tonight is because I'm so concerned about our little city. A lot of us love Lafayette because of how green it is, the trees, the hillsides. And I'm very concerned about the new type of architecture that's coming into town. And I'd like to give you 4 quick examples of what I'm talking about. One is at the corner of Dolores. And of course, it's that huge building that's going in there where Cape Cod used to be. And I'm so afraid of what its outside is going to look like in the end. And I'm just asking you and praying that it's going to be some soft outside colors so that it would diminish its huge size. The little building across the street that is brick and subdued is so pretty, and I hope this one doesn't overwhelm it. And then when we look down at Brown Avenue across from the Forge, we have a new 4-story apartment building, which of course is too high, but I know you can't do anything about that. The state is telling us we have to add that extra height to it. I drove by the other day and it has those ghastly back windows, and I'm hoping it's not going to have a geometric outside group of panels that are all different colors. Another example is on Huff Street, that new apartment building that's being put in on Huff. Of course, we had the beautiful old shingled buildings where La Finestra and the Chamber used to be on the corner, shaded by those trees, and unfortunately it burned. But down the street on Lafayette Circle further is a very large office building that's not obtrusive because it's shingled and it's surrounded by trees. But in we're going to put this, what I think looks like something from outer space, this new apartment building that has those black windows, and then it is on its siding, it seems to have geometric colored plaques. In fact, I think that I saw some of them were red. And to me, it's just absolutely ghastly, and it doesn't go with the neighborhood at all. And then my last example is neighborhood development, and it's on Moraga Boulevard and also on Monroe. There are 3 little houses, not little houses, that have been put there. Most of the houses there are smallish, but they have those black windows and that white board. I guess it's made out of wood, but the white wood and those black windows, all 3 of them just stick out in the neighborhood. They don't fit at all. And so I think the reason I'm asking you and taking your time is to plead with you to not let this new architecture just envelop our lovely green and brown Lafayette. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Mason, you're up first.
I really appreciate your comments, Mary, as somebody who's been in Lafayette since 62. I share your concerns. You may want to repeat those comments to the Design Review Commission.
Oh,
They are the ones that are their primary, that's their, I don't want to say primary responsibility, but that is a big thing that they look at. And an in-depth conversation with them would probably really serve both of you, your concerns and them well.
thank you. Does the plan go to them first before it comes to you and then goes to the city? I mean, then goes to the council. Does it go to them first and then to you and then to the council?
So their general purview is they do the design work, we'll just say the aesthetics and the look. We're massing and siting generally. So the things that you're commenting on generally are the purview of the design commission. Sometimes we do push back and make some suggestions to them, but that is their purview in terms of their responsibility.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've taken your time by mistake tonight then.
Oh, no, it's not a mistake at all. Just letting you know, they're first and that's their expertise. We still do see it when it comes to us, but that is their original purview of input.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Maggio, did you have follow-up?
You know, Commissioner Mason beat me to the punch. Those were exactly my same comments for Marianne, that they really need to be directed at design review, because sometimes we don't even see those projects. They're only design projects, and they don't come to the Planning Commission at all. But with that said, thanks, Marianne, because we do need to hear it. We need to hear it from the public, what they're thinking about some of the new things that are coming. And just to clarify, the project that you're looking at Mount Diablo and Mount View was approved over 10 years ago.
Oh, God.
So it just took a forever amount of time for them to get the shovel in the ground. But that's something that was approved long ago. And I think it will be a lot more handsome than it looks in its current form with sticks. So I think in the long term, you're going to be happier with it than you are now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Do we have any other public comments?
No hands are raised.
Okay, great. We'll move to item number 4, consent calendar. I have one thing that needs to be changed on one of the 3 meetings. Are there any others that folks would like to weigh in on? Commissioner Maggio?
Yes. On item 4C, I need to change a word on line 20. Line 20, it's printed onerous and it's onus, O-N-U-S. Very different meanings.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else have any comments on the draft meeting minutes? I have one for item 4B, the April 19th. So on page 4, line 27, it states Chair Farzan disclosed he met with the applicant. It's actually, I disclosed that I did not meet with the applicant. So just want to make that clear for the record. With those changes, does somebody want to move on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, we've got moved by Commissioner Heising and second by Commissioner Maggio. I'm going to go ahead and do the vote. Commissioner Heising?
Aye.
Commissioner Labong?
Aye.
Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio?
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich?
Aye.
Chair Farzan? Aye. So we have a 6-0 vote on the consent calendar. I'm going to move to item number 5, continued public meetings, 5A, which is TR 9539, DR 23-19, and TP 50-19. Do we have a staff report? Jonathan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. DR 2319, also known as Samantha Townhomes, owners Bing and Lai Lee, It's for the construction of 12 for-sale condominium units on 2 vacant properties in the downtown at the end of Stewart Street. So this continued public hearing is the 4th meeting out of a maximum of 5 under SB 330, 5 meetings in which the city has to take final action on a development. There have been 2 previous meetings already at the Design Review Commission where the commission offered comments and forwarded the comments to the Planning Commission. And then the first Planning Commission meeting was at the last meeting, June 7th, where the commission considered the Design Review Commission's comments, provided feedback back to the applicant, asked for some additional information and revisions, and then directed staff to prepare an approval resolution and draft conditions of approval for today's meeting. So that draft resolution and conditions are in the staff packet for your consideration. There have been some responses that the applicant made to the commission's comments. I'm going to let the applicant address those as part of their presentation. I just wanted to take my time today and draw your attention to 2 conditions in the draft COAs that I can show you now. So there is condition 27. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, it states that the applicant shall enter into an agreement with the city guaranteeing that 2 of the units will be affordable. And then it specifies that 1 unit shall be affordable to low income residents and the other one is to a moderate income resident. So I'd recommend that the city make a revision to this, the Planning Commission make a revision to the COA to state that both those units can be at a moderate income. There is a provision of the city's inclusionary housing ordinance that says if the total number of units is between 7 and 20, this project is 12, that the inclusionary units can be at moderate. So that revision should be made to be consistent with what is allowed. I'd also recommend the commission add a condition stating that prior to the issuance of building permit, the applicant shall submit a revised landscape plan showing the substitution of proposed plants along Stewart Street to incorporate more evergreen species. And that would be in a response to the commission's comments at the last meeting. But other than that, I'd recommend that the commission review the draft resolution, the draft conditions of approval, conduct a public hearing because it's still a continued hearing item and was not closed at the last meeting. And then adopt PC resolution 2021-05, finding the project exempt from CEQA and approving the project subject to conditions. Here for any questions.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Normally I would hand it off, but I'm just going to follow up really quickly on COA 27. So why are we asking for both to be moderate instead of one being moderate and one being low, which is stated currently?
It's because that the city's existing inclusionary housing ordinance offers that flexibility, that if the total number of units being built is between 7 and 20, they can decide whether it's going to be low income or moderate income.
Right. So I just want to make sure. So it's going to be rewritten where it can be low, but you're saying it has to be at least moderate, correct?
It has to be at least moderate. The 2
at least moderate,
yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And has the applicant spoken to the city about wanting both to be at least moderate and not one moderate and one low?
Yeah, this revision came from conversations with the applicant. So I think that's their intention to have them at moderate levels.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And sorry, I took questions first there. Commissioner Maggio.
Just following up on the chair's comments, are they still entitled to all of the concessions if they reduce it to moderate for 2?
Yes, the
Waivers?
state density bonus law says that for a condominium project, they get their concessions if it's 2 moderate units.
They do.
Yes.
Okay. Well, while I have you here, I just wanted to point out in the resolution 2021-5, you go down the page to 7, and then it skips to item 4 and references the city council. So I think something got cut and pasted incorrectly in the resolution. You might want to check that out while we're going through our public period here. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions for Jonathan? Commissioner Labong?
I just a request more, and I wasn't present at the first meeting, but I think it would be helpful in the project summary just to list the other meetings, especially as we get closer to our deadline or to our top number. And I don't think it does, and I appreciate that you said it, but I just think from just a clarity point of view, that would be helpful. So that's all.
Any more questions for Jonathan? It does not appear we do, so we will open it up for the applicant's presentation. Thank you, Jonathan.
Jonathan, who should we bring in?
Clay Fry and Stuart Rickard, please.
Thank you. Both are on their way. You're muted, Stuart.
Mr. Rickard, you're muted.
Thank you. So Stuart Rickard here with Bay Area Urban Development. Thank you very much for all of your work on the Planning Commission. And we're very pleased to be here. It's been a long journey, and we're really looking forward to being able to develop a project that brings smaller, more entry kind of units to Lafayette. And I'll turn over the presentation to Clay Fry, the architect.
Good evening, commissioners, chairman. Appreciate your time. The public comments was well stated by that woman. There's a lot of time and energy that I know goes into sitting where you sit. Jonathan, I have 2 questions about your conditions of approval. You're going to be adding one about a revised landscape plan. I didn't see one in there for the tree replacement paragraph that you have in your staff report. I assume you'll be adding a condition speaking to that. You have a statement in the report, but I didn't see it as a condition. And with that, I'm happy to bring up my screen and walk you through the responses to some of the questions we got last time. Again, this is a front rendering. One of the questions we have, we got questions about fire department access, and we brought in a record architect and been in conversation with the fire department pretty much on a daily basis since the last time we saw you to discuss where the fire trucks will park, whether or not fire apparatus trucks are required to respond to this site, and doing rescue windows. We provided the fire district these ladder diagrams, which is usually provided at a construction document level to provide access to the fronts. The height on the back side of the building is less than 30 feet, so they can actually ladder up from the back side to all of that. And thus the fire, and we have a condition, and the information will be forthcoming, but basically they're providing ladder access across the back to every roof, and then rescue window across the front to every bedroom, because the bedrooms only face the front. And based on conversations today, and I believe Jonathan got a call this morning as well from Todd Sheesh, they're comfortable. And of course, when we go in for building permit, we have to prove all of that, and if substantially change the design, which we don't believe would occur, we will get to come back and visit you. I also reached out to Republic Services, Kimberly Lamb, to discuss how she services the houses up at the top of this hill currently. And they use their smaller trash trucks, which I didn't know even existed, to go up there and service those homes because of the slope of this. And she said that they'll just come back down, and for a nominal fee, they'll pick up the bins. These will just be parked on the street on the far left. These will be parked on the far side of the driveway on trash day. They'll go in and get them and lift them into the truck. That's a service they provide. And I reconfirmed that with her, and she reconfirmed it with operations. So we don't see the need for anything other than people's cars going in there. We don't see any large trucks having to get in. On the roof plan, we have an acoustic report that I believe made it into your report that essentially says plexiglass screens approximately 4'6" on top of the parapet. We also confirmed with the record architect that we do these with clips, so they're breakaway. So when the fire department wants to get up there, they punch them and they fall in, which is a pretty typical way you do rescue windows, even in a home. And that was good news because it's essentially the same results that the housing project up the hill would have had to have done. We went through with Jonathan on all the trees. I know Commissioner Maggio and I counted things a little bit differently last time. I was counting gallon tree conversions, not actual tree numbers. And Jonathan took this document and I think wove it into his staff report. I think that the condition about studying the trees along here as a more evergreen tree, we can certainly have that as a condition in a revised landscape plan that we can update and send to you. And then we could have the condition about tree replacement. And then last but not least, we had these little art panels that were down at the front along the sidewalk to sort of make an active edge at the end of Stewart, something a little bit interesting for the community to look at, people to walk by. And we decided that they would look really good on the back side of both driveways across from the front doors of all the units. So that same aesthetic has been brought up into the two driveways. The other thing that we did is we took screenshots from inside the units or at the front door to show that, that's essentially the views looking out of them. So it's not like you're looking across at a blank wall. I mean, there's windows, there's planting, there's artwork. You can see out to the sky. And that was the general list, I think, of the bullet items on the first page of the staff report. I'm available to answer any questions or go back through anything that you may want me to do.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Fry? All right, Vice Chair Radin, you're first up.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Fry, thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate that a lot of the comments that were brought up last time were addressed. I do personally really like the addition of the extra artistic screens. I think that's great. I just have a couple of clarifying questions. Will there be like an HOA associated with these units? And the reason I'm asking is I heard in your presentation that you said for a nominal fee that the garbage trucks can go up some of the driveways, and then whereas the people in these units that are shown in the image right now on the screen, theirs would be on the curb. So I was just wondering, is that obviously at the homeowner's expense, or is the HOA as a whole responsible for the garbage? And then, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Kimberly asked me that exact question. Because they're individually served units, the individual unit pays the fee for the retrieval. And then there is a common area HOA normally, I believe, correct, Stuart?
Correct.
So to service the landscape, repair art panels, deal with curbs and gutters in the driveways. So the units, as you astutely observed, these units pay a premium to have their garbage be retrieved. Because you can't park it out here, it'll take off down the hill. So it needs to be in the flat. And I would think that having helped write some of the HOA stuff for other condominium units, this unit will be told that's where, when you buy this unit, this is how your trash works.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And I think you're probably, by confirming that there is also an HOA, you just answered the question I hadn't asked, which was regarding the clear I'll just call them plexiglass barriers on the patios. Yeah, those right there. The plexiglass screens, my questions were going to be related to safety. For example, if one cracks or if they become, very foggy with time, something like that, what would be the means for an owner to replace them or get them repaired? And it sounds like that would be an HOA item. So I think that was it. Thank you again for your presentation and for answering the questions from last time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Heising, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, same comment. Just appreciation. Mr. Fry went through and covered most of the questions we had last time. There was, however, one outstanding question that had come up at the last meeting is turning radii exhibits for maneuvering of larger vehicles. And I was wondering if you could speak to that. Maybe that's something coming later.
So the only large vehicle that turning rate is the one potentially down here. Crash trucks won't be going in here. Fire trucks won't be going in here. This is basically the people's cars who live there go in those two things. So the turning radius down at the base was in the civil drawings because the fire district asked, because it's a dead end and there's no circle here. They wanted a hammerhead diagram, which Human and Company put in the original submittal packet. The question then came, well, aren't trash trucks going in there and aren't fire trucks going in there? You'll need turning radius for that. And the answer is they're not going in there. So we're not.
Nor delivery trucks. They'd all stay out on the private drive and just walk.
The mailboxes are there. If they decide to getting together and do an Amazon box kind of thing, then they would park on the corner. I live on a hill. They use all the small little vans to get where I am.
Okay. And those garages, are they going to be accommodating larger vehicles like SUVs, or will they only be able to hold a small vehicle? So you're not needing to run a larger turn template for the garages themselves?
The driveway requirement in Lafayette is 20 feet. And we, I can make the whole thing do it.
And the only reason I asked, I know this came up on the project on Brown, just because it was just so tight in there.
Well, the Brown thing had to do with dead end turnaround turning radius. We actually have 27 feet from the face of the garage door to here. City of Lafayette has allowed 24 feet of backup, so I have three extra feet through here. The reason I do that is because originally the fire department wanted to drive in here, so we made the driveway wide. We also tested full-size parking spaces, which is what's drawn there. So, the turning radius to get out of a standard parking space in 27 feet, that's pretty much every parking 90-degree parking lot in Lafayette. So we don't see any turning radius issues.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Good question. You always have the good super technical stuff.
It's the engineer in me.
It is the engineer, I was going to say. And don't give them a bigger head, please. Yeah, I'm just kidding. I think Commissioner Mason also had questions.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Clay. Again, not to get too hyper technical, but regarding the punch out plexiglass screens, most people remember that they need to be designed for a given load, 20 PSF on the screen. But most people also miss the section that glass screens, it's a gray area whether plexiglass is included in that, require a 4-time factor of safety for push out, and that load is in any direction. So before you commit to something in writing, make sure you're comfortable with the mechanisms so we don't have to come back.
We've for example, on rescue windows, they have to open to a full 90 to get somebody out, but you have the limiter clips so that children don't fall out. that limits the window opening to 4 inches, and that same philosophy is the construction document philosophy that will be implemented.
Yeah, but just remember that these are safety rails and guardrails, not windows. So they're treated
Actually, the parapet's 42 inches and serves as the guardrail. The windscreen is on top of that, so they're not part of the guardrail system. They're simply a wind and acoustic barrier. If I zoom in, you might be able to see that the parapet behind is tall. So this is the guardrail, and then this is the acoustic / windscreen.
I'm sorry, I did not pick that up. I understand now. Thank
It was
you.
a great question. Made me wonder there for a minute.
Well, you're always been one of the good people for all the little details, and I appreciate this.
I try.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Fry? Commissioner Maggio?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Fry, I just want to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that you have to take out all of the maple trees and and exchange them for evergreen. What I was looking for is just some more robust landscape. It could even be in shrubbery that covers 4 seasons. What you have right now is a heavy allotment for spring and summer, and then perhaps the maple leaves turning red in fall, but I just didn't want it to be so bleak in the winter. So if you're looking at your plant palette with your landscape architect, just look at replacing some of those things that can do something for you in the winter time. And I see a lot of things here that's going to require some pinching back and a lot of maintenance. So I'm curious of who is going to be maintaining the landscape.
Well, the HOA will end up having to hire a group, or they can do it themselves if they wanted to. I've never heard of HOA doing that. We actually talked about these trees, the ones that are right in front of the units, because these are street trees. So we figure these will stay as street trees.
Okay.
And then we were talking about doing an evergreen behind them.
Great.
So as street trees turn, you still have an evergreen tree. And then after our meeting, I was on the phone with the landscape architect that morning. And we welcome a condition to continue to work with staff, have it, run back by you to confirm that the landscape does what everybody wants it to do. So we're completely open to refining the landscape scheme the same way, we refine the architecture.
Yeah, normally I don't think we get this detailed about it, but because it's so minimal, I think it's that more important. You've got a Pitastrum and Nandina, and those are going to provide color all year, but a lot of these other things aren't really colorful.
It's a great comment because, I'm throwing things in there that I know are green and don't die all the way all the time. They don't represent his actual plants, but the intent is, that this isn't a deciduous ivy.
Yeah.
It's, dead.
So it's just being aware of that, and it's certainly something that staff can work with you on. I don't think it's something we want to see again, but
hey, I'm open to any help.
Okay.
At any time. I mean, I've lived here since 1968, so I'll be driving by this, so it better look nice, or I'll never be able to go to that again.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Fry or Mr. Record? I have one quick follow-up with respect to the 2 units being at least moderate. Are you open to one being low income? Obviously under Contra Costa standards, or not?
Well, to be honest, this is a challenging project. It's on a hill, it's fairly small. And we worked with staff when we first proposed this project to determine what the affordability standards would be. And the code is complicated, but it does provide, like Jonathan said, that units of 12, a 12 unit project like ours would be subject to 2 moderate. So, you know, that's what we underwrote. That's what we've pursued this time. And so we would like to continue to have it that way.
Understood. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and close the applicant's presentation. Do we have any public comments on this project?
If you would like to comment on the project, go ahead and hit the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or *9 if you're calling in. Seeing none.
Thank you. I'm going to assume you don't have a rebuttal, but it's open to you. You've got time, so there you go.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to the commission, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to open up the floor. Comments? Commissioner Maggio?
Yeah, just a question for Jonathan. Did you find the issue that I found on page 5 of 6 on the resolution?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us how that should read?
We can change city council to planning commission.
But it jumps from 7 and then it goes back to 4, 5, 6, 7. So would you be renumbering it or reformatting?
Yes, likely that's going to be an easy fix. I'm going to pull it up again.
Okay, just before we approve a resolution, I just wanted to make sure it was correct. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's supposed to be A, B, and C, right?
So yes, I'll show it here. So it jumps from 7 to 4 because all of number 3 references the findings. So now, therefore, it be resolved that 1, 2, 3, and then ending with 4, 5, 6. So I think it'd read better if I changed the number ordering with the indents.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it is correct that it is 4.
Okay, got it. I understood. With the change to planning commission instead of city council in the first line of the first indent, correct? Okay. Got it. Thank you. It looked like Vice Chair Radnich.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just another follow-up question for staff. The applicant had mentioned that the tree replacement text is not included as a COA, but it was implied through the staff report. Is that something that staff is interested in adding as a condition, or is that covered under the new addition, the new COA addition regarding like the landscaping?
It'd be my recommendation to add that as a separate condition, to specify that the number of trees that they're planting as part of the project is sufficient to cover the mitigation for the entire project.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And just Chair, I can make the findings otherwise, thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments from commissioners? Commissioner Labong?
I wasn't at the first meeting, I said earlier, but I like the design in terms of an infill project and making use of the space. I can make the findings. I don't have any other questions, and I can make the findings.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, for the record, will you restate the COA on the landscaping, just so we're all on the same page on that one?
Yes, it would be to 2 conditions reflecting COAs or reflecting landscaping. One, it's just submit a revised landscape plan to substitute some of the shrubs along Stewart Street to be evergreen species to be reviewed by staff, and a separate COA stating that for the tree permit, the mitigation requirement would be reduced to the number of plants and trees that they're proposing to plant as part of the landscape plan. So no additional in lieu fee would be required.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I mean, I can say for the record, I can make the findings. I really like the fact that they worked with the staff and design review and us on getting this to where we are. I appreciate that. Sometimes when we have this, it's like pulling teeth, and it wasn't here. So it was good. I know it took some time, but we appreciate the work that you've done, and I can make the findings. I'll leave it. Does anybody want to make a motion? Oh, I know who's going to do it.
Okay, well, actually, I just have one comment, and I realize now I wish I would have seen this last time. So I'm just going to say it for the record. I don't think it's anything the applicant is required to do at this time, or just heads up. On the frontage on Stewart Street, those 4 units that where the garbage cans are parked on the street, those 4, it looked like there's like an awning that goes across the top of the windows and down the side. Me personally, I'm a big natural light windows person. It would be a bummer if those obstruct any type of view. It was hard to see in the images. Just something to consider that I wish I would have noticed last time. But I'm going to make a motion that we adopt PC Resolution 2021-05, finding the project exempt from CEQA and approving the project subject to conditions with the revisions discussed tonight for COA 27, that COA be revised so that both units, if decided by the applicant, that they could be moderate income level, and add a condition of approval regarding the landscaping as described by staff tonight, to supplement some of the landscaping to be evergreen, and then a COA regarding the tree replacement mitigation requirements to offset impacts.
Just one point of clarification. Just
Sure.
want to make sure on number 27 that the 2 units will be at least moderate, but
Yes.
obviously if the applicant chooses can be lower than moderate, but at least moderate. Just
Yes,
for
thank you.
clarity's sake.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I'll give it to Commissioner Labong. We'll vote on this. Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Labong,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich,
Aye.
Chair Farzan, aye. So we have a 6-0 vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will now move to new public hearings. 6A, WCF 08-20. T-Mobile is the applicant. Do we have a staff report? It looks like Jonathan, you're up again.
Yes. And for the last item, there's a 14-day appeal period to the city council.
Thank you.
Okay. WCF 08-20. The applicant is T-Mobile. It's a proposal to modify an existing monopine on a developed lot in the Hillside Overlay District. And first, I'll zoom in to show where the property is located in the context of the city. So we're going into 3312 Deer Hill Road. So there's a large LR10 parcel north of Deer Hill Road and Highway 24. They have a few wireless facilities on the property already. So there's a single family residence here. And there is a shed and an equipment enclosure here, collection of trees. Just to the north of that tree is a monopine, a stealth facility disguised as a tree. Really, it's a wireless facility. And then to the northeast, there's a collection of standing wireless antennas. So the scope of work includes the replacement of equipment on the monopine, an expansion of the equipment enclosure. These antennas would remain untouched. So now I'll pull up a short presentation. Okay. So for the framework for review, for this modification to an existing facility, there are a couple of findings that need to be made. One are the findings for a wireless communications facility. The same findings for a modification are those for a new facility. Those findings have to be made again. Those wireless facility findings reference the development standards. A list of those is included in the staff report and staff's response to how the project complies with those development standards. And because the project is in the Hillside Overlay District, the commission will also need to make the findings for a hillside development permit to approve this modification. The fourth item is to acknowledge that there have been previous entitlements for this project, and I wanted to go over some of the history so that we understand how we got here today. So the property has historically been used as a single family residence and as a wireless facilities area. It started in 1994 with the Planning Commission's approval of those standing collection of antennas to the northeast. And then in 2001, that is when the Planning Commission approved that stealth facility, that monopine. It has gone unmodified since then. And then in 2013 and 2017, they've made modifications to that collection of antennas. So it's been an active site that is continuously being updated. This slide shows the existing condition on the left, the monopine with the antennas, mounting brackets, and then the proposed. So the height of the monopine and the design of the facility as a stealth facility would remain the same. The mounting brackets, the radio units would be removed and they'd be replaced with larger radio units, antennas, and longer antennas shown here. Here's a rendering provided by the applicant that shows what the proposed design looks like. As you can see, the larger antennas, and then this piece of equipment here, I believe that's called the rad center, that's sticking up towards the top. So as the staff report shows, staff finds that there can be modifications to some revisions to the design to better align the project with the required findings for approval. I'll go back here to discuss them. So I mentioned that in 2001, the Planning Commission approved the stealth facility. And in 2013, that's when the city's wireless ordinance came into existence. And one of the changes in that ordinance was a prohibition on stealth facilities. So currently the development standards state that designing a structure as a fake natural feature is not allowed. You can request an exception to a development standard, but that requires additional findings. And I think the intent of that is because many communities have found that those natural features, especially one standing by its own, tend to draw more attention instead of blending into the environment, which is hopefully the goal. So staff finds that the proposal as shown would defeat the stealth intent of the original project, draw more attention to the monopine by increasing the size of the equipment, by increasing the size of the mounting brackets, and by reducing the effect that the tree has, that the fake branches have on hiding the structure. This, as you see in the proposed image, a large portion of the canopy is going to be equipment, and I think that's what is shown in the rendering. If someone were to look at this facility, it wouldn't so easily come across as a stealth facility. So based on those concerns and the fact that it's visible from Deer Hill Road, which is a viewing evaluation site, staff would recommend that the applicant go with one or two options. One is to reduce the scope of work to something that is more similar to existing standards and would blend in more nicely with the existing stealth facility. The alternative to that is to apply for an exception to the development standards and augment the stealth facility, increase the height, increase the width, so that you can better hide the proposed equipment as proposed today. Because stealth facilities are prohibited by the wireless ordinance, and specifically ones where fake natural features, staff would recommend, if they go with the latter option, that they apply for development standards so that the city can make the findings again, that this is the only way to provide wireless service in the area, and it's the least intrusive way to do that. And they've considered other options as part of that. So staff's recommendation for the commission is to review the proposed modifications, conduct a public hearing, and to continue the item to July 19th to allow the applicant to revise the plans in one of those two directions. Here for any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Commissioner Maggio is ready to go. She loves these wireless matters.
Well, yeah, you know. So I just wanted to clarify that option A is actually to remove the artificial stealth features. Is that correct?
It would be to, they would keep it as a monopine. They would just reduce the size of the equipment that they're proposing to have it closer to what's there now.
But isn't the size necessary? That's part of the proposal now. The size of the equipment is the proposal.
Yes, and I think that's what the applicant will say.
So I'd like to recommend option C, which is to go ahead with the equipment, remove the stealth artificial features, and paint all of the equipment out that lovely shade of gray that you can't really see, that we've decided is probably the best color, depending on where visibility. So thank you.
Do you have any other questions for Jonathan? Commissioner Heising?
So is option B more or less saying that the monopine is the stealth facility is grandfathered in because it was approved by the city prior to our current policy or ordinance?
Option B would require the commission to make the findings. That the stealth facility is necessary and the least intrusive means to provide service.
Got it. Okay. All right. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? So let me follow up on that, Jonathan. So as I understand B, an exception to the development standards that would make it taller and wider, but the taller and wider would hide the new equipment. Is that a good way of paraphrasing what option B is?
Correct.
Okay, so then what am I missing then? If we're making it taller and wider, how is that better than it's proposed now? Just because the larger equipment stands out more on the proposed view that T-Mobile has? I'm just confused by making it taller and wider, and that helps it stand out less.
Yeah, the taller of a stealth facility would hide, it might draw attention overall to that structure, but it would make it look less, it'd hide the equipment more.
Okay, Got it. So it's more the hiding the equipment, not the fake tree nature of the actual structure itself.
Right.
Okay. I was just trying to get that straight because it just didn't work in my head the right way. Okay, got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. No further questions. I'll open the floor to the applicant.
Tom Johnson. Thank you. Tom Johnson is coming in. Mr. Johnson, you are muted.
Mute. There you go. Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for your time this evening. As you know, this is a project modification for T-Mobile on this existing wireless facility. I was not aware of the option A and B going into this meeting, so it kind of took me aback here for a minute. I was kind of in the same position as understanding the complexities between how making it bigger is less intrusive. And I find myself in the same camp as Commissioner Maggio, and I like option C. I think it makes the most sense if we are looking at purely an aesthetic component, how the increasing the size and the footprint of the tower is less visible to a facility that has 4 antennas on it already. And this facility or this modification would be to add 2 new antennas and the supporting radios that go behind the antennas. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The arm where the tree or the antennas are housed to the tree is only increasing in length by around 18 inches. So when we look at an 18-inch distant size in the distance that we look at from street level up to this location, I am fairly positive that nobody will see an 18-inch difference in that arm. And the size of these antennas would be very well mitigated just by the existing screening or even adding a couple of extra branches if necessary. But I don't agree that changing out the tower structure for something wider and taller makes any sense. I think option C, if I had my druthers in the statement of this, I think that would be the path to go. But I'm welcome to dialogue. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do we have questions for Mr. Johnson? I do. Let's see, Commissioner Labong.
This is more of a generic question. In communities where stealth facilities are allowed, do you see, Mr. Johnson, modifications now that time has passed and some of them look out of place? Are they being done differently? And I know I'm asking this because I'm not necessarily of the same opinion, but that's how we have it here. So I'm just more curious for our knowledge base, because when I looked at it and saw it was a stealth and then saw the other ones that weren't and kind of looked back and forth, I saw, wow, it's not great, but it's sure a lot better than those other ones. And I'm talking about the ones that are
behind it,
farther up the hill.
Yep.
So I'm just curious more than anything about your knowledge of stealth facilities in other jurisdictions that still allow it. How has that morphed over time?
Well, so 99% of jurisdictions require stealth facilities. Lafayette is a little bit different. And my opinion in the matter as well is that when we're talking about a structure that's 12 feet tall, sitting on a ridge top that's several hundred yards away from any viewing area, that is a whole different consideration in understanding the stealth technique and is it necessary or not. We've seen a lot of progression over the years in the wireless industry with stealth facilities and how they have come along. But from a jurisdictional standpoint, there's, like I said, 99% of the cities require stealth unless we're in some form of industrial area where it makes sense, or commercial area where it makes sense to not stealth. In an instance like this location and the existing users that also have unstealth facilities behind this one and the height of the structure, it makes zero sense to have a 12-foot tall tree.
Well, thank you for your answer.
Any more questions, Commissioner Labong? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Johnson, I think, correct me if I misheard this, but you said that branches could be added to the existing structure?
Yeah, we'd have to evaluate it and just see. You know, most of the time when we have monopines like this, or should I just say monopines in general, there are portions where you could change out some of the branching structure and increase the foliage count. Being that this is only 12 feet tall, you know, we would have to get with the engineering division and really see if this is something that could be done. My guess is that it's possible.
And then on the hillside, I'm looking at one of the images in the staff report. It looks like there were other trees planted in an attempt to grow up and blend in on the hillside there, just so that the monopine wasn't sticking out there by itself. Is that a mitigation planting that your T-Mobile did, or the other towers behind you?
I
can't
not
tell.
familiar with the landscape requirements that was originally entitled.
Okay, Jonathan.
I would imagine it was probably part of the T-Mobile project. I mean, that's kind of normal, but I wouldn't know for sure.
Yeah,
Commissioner
just with
Heising, are you looking at figure 2?
I am looking at. Where does it say the figure?
So I mean, there's 6 of 7. There's the side angle where it says proposed new and existing antenna structure, and then I'm seeing the 4 or 5 trees.
It says Blue Water Design at the bottom lower right corner, and then the photo I'm looking at, it says completed July 14th, 2020.
He's looking at the photo sim.
The photos, yeah, got it.
Page
Got it.
17, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. And then if you, it appears there's some plantings in there, and I'm wondering if that's going back to, just a lone monopine sitting out there alone, and were those plantings there mitigations so that they would grow up in the future, and then it looks like a cluster of trees there versus just the one sitting there by itself? Or was it an attempt to screen the competitor's tower behind? I was just trying to figure that out.
Commissioner Heising, I can take a look at the approval documents from the previous applications, but I don't have that answer readily available.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks. Mr. Johnson, you answered my question about the possibility of adding branches. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, I have a couple of follow-up questions. So if we're increasing the equipment and it extends the width 18 inches, instead of adding new branches, could branches be replaced to make them longer? So it's not a matter of finding slots to put in branches, but the same branches, but longer ones. I'm assuming T-Mobile and its operations has to make larger branches across the country somewhere, somehow. Is that another option?
Yeah, it could definitely be explored. It probably makes a rebranching of the structure is very plausible. It's done when we have a lot of branch failure on towers.
So is that a viable option for T-Mobile?
Yeah, it's viable, definitely.
Okay, that answers my question on that end. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to land on A, B, or C, or D now, an extension of the branches. So if we don't have any other questions, do we have any public comments? It appears that's a nod of yes.
We do. One hand is raised. Conrad Brees will be brought in to offer comment. And if anyone else would like to, please go ahead and raise your hand. Conrad Brees, you're in the meeting. Go ahead and unmute, turn on your video if you'd like. You have 3 minutes to make comments. You're muted, sir. Mr. Brees, you're muted.
You're muted, Mr. Brees.
There you go.
Good evening. My name is Conrad Brees. My wife and I have lived here for 37 years in Lafayette. I spent 46 years as a real estate lawyer. I have negotiated hundreds of cell phone tower agreements. I must say that if you stood in front of an audience of the public in Lafayette and you were talking about this issue, this is like angels on the head of a pin. Everybody drives by the cell phone towers. They've driven by them for years, and it's appalling how much you want to increase the cost of our bill by diddling around with working through things. I've represented all kinds of cell phone people. They accommodate you. Nobody even knows that there are cell phone towers on the hills around this town. So sitting here spending hours of public money and public time dealing with this is ridiculous. You ask people where the cell phone towers are in this town, they don't have a clue. I know where they are, but they don't have a clue. You're talking about whether something is 2 inches longer or 4 inches longer. Nobody can see it from 1,000 yards away. Get real. I have done these agreements with every city in this Bay Area, and Lafayette is the toughest place around. And I don't think it's something we should be proud of. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Brees? No, thank you for your comments. Do we have any other public comments, Greg?
Last call for raised hands. Seeing none.
All right, giving it back to Mr. Johnson, you've got some time for rebuttal if you would like to make any additional comments.
I am good, thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission. I'll open up the floor for comments. Vice Chair Radnich.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess like before we actually start talking about a new potential option C or D, I would first like to ask staff, would option C, which we're referring to as a new option that is basically just a standard facility that's not disguised as a monopine, would that facility be covered under the existing application, or would that require a new application by the applicant? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that we would just modify the existing project description and stick with the same application.
Okay, was that an option that had been discussed with the applicant prior to Commissioner Maggio's suggestion tonight?
No, not to my understanding.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yes, I just want to respond to Commissioner Heising's previous question. So in the conditions of approval for the 2001 land use permit, there's a condition that says that the applicant shall submit a landscape plan showing the screening of the base of the monopine. So I think it is possible that the trees you're seeing there were a requirement.
So you said that was 2001.
Yes.
So in 20 years, that's as big as they got.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Okay. All right. No, thanks. I just wanted to be clear on how that it was tied to the monopine and they've been out there 20 years. Okay, thanks.
But the monopine has stayed the same size though. I'm just kidding. Okay. Do you have any more comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, actually, I agree with Commissioner Labong. I think looking at that monopine and then looking at the towers or the equipment behind it and up the hill a little bit, to me, it's night and day. I don't really prefer option C because why take away? I don't know why we don't have stealth facilities in town. I think they cover up things. So I know that's how our ordinance is structured now. And I find it interesting that most cities allow that and we're one that doesn't. I wasn't around created, and I probably would have made these same comments. But so I'm not really in favor of C. I'm more in favor of modifying what's out there. I mean, I wouldn't want to replace it with a big monopine, something bigger. I would see if the engineers at T-Mobile could. I agree with you, Chair Farsan. I don't think the engineers are going to allow some contractor go drilling holes in that existing base or that existing pole because I think it would, they'd have to do a bunch of engineering calculations and determine that it's not going to weaken that pole. But I do think they could add length to some of those branches and use the same holes or connection points. So that would be my preference. To not go away from the monopine and just maybe try to enhance it a little bit and let T-Mobile put the equipment there they have or that they say they need to put there for the connectivity they need, and then just try to mask it as best as possible. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason?
I'm split on monopines. I am fine with it here. I agree with Commissioner Heising. But I do remember the one we did recently in Release Valley area where, a 35-foot tall monopine would have been just tremendous there. Here, everybody's used to seeing it, making it a little wider by 2 feet or whatever, by, as close as we can get to viewing it. I don't think anybody's really going to notice the change. So, for what it's worth, that's my suggestion.
Commissioner Labonge?
I'm looking at A5 just for reference, everyone. And so what they proposed to me seems to work. It's basically they're going to add more antennas to the current one. I think Mr. Johnson mentioned they could look at a little leafage. If they can, great. If they can't, and it looks like the proposed on the south elevation of A5, to me, that works. And I appreciate Commissioner Maggio's not for the stealth, but I think this one, it looks a little better than the other one. So I would just say leave it as it is and put the additional stuff on and call it a day. That's kind of where I am.
Commissioner Maggio?
So I'm of course of the school that is against the monopines, and we had just a rash back a while back of some very blue monopines. And you know, when we looked at the hillsides, if you're asked to look at the hill like we were to this week, to look at the proposal, you're gonna, obviously, you're looking right at the equipment, and so you're gonna notice it. But I'm of the school that you will notice an ugly monopine before you will notice the equipment. You're gonna drive by, just like Mr. Bree said, never met him before, but I agree with him. You're gonna drive right by and not notice equipment that's painted out unless but you will notice a bad monopine. And the problem with monopines is they are larger than the equipment to hide it. So I'm holding my ground on C, put it in, but paint it out. You know, it's great when we ask as condition for approval to add trees, but the problem with adding trees is there's no irrigation generally in these sites. And so the trees don't fare well. So I'm not suggesting that because I think it's been largely unsuccessful unless it's in a site that receives some irrigation. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about it. There was a reason we put it into our ordinance to outlaw the monopines. They, you know, in some landscapes, they blend in a little bit better, but with our oak hillsides, I just find that these blue monopines just draw more attention to themselves than the equipment.
Thank you. Vice Chair Radnich?
Thank you. Another question for staff. Under Commissioner Heising and Commissioner Labong were mentioning, I think it was you two, were mentioning adding, you know, longer lengths of branches and stuff like that. Would that require us making an exception or finding an exception to the requirement as option B would require? Or is that something that would be, I would say, allowed under the existing project, basically? Because I guess what I'm getting at, or I'll let you answer, Jonathan, sorry.
I wanted to see if Greg had any thoughts on that one.
Arguably, you'd be increasing the size of the facility, and so you would want to state affirmatively that the stealthing is the least intrusive means. Just to give a little history on this one, it was originally approved as a monopine, and they showed essentially what looked like a Christmas tree. It had a conical shape, and I think there was a condition of approval that said all the equipment will be within that triangular silhouette. When it was installed, the upper portions of the antennas were sticking out, and so that silhouetting of the equipment outside of what you would expect as the irregular silhouette of a tree, a conical evergreen tree, alerts one to the fact that it is a monopine, a stealth facility, and staff's interpretation of the proposal would exacerbate that. So to answer your question, rebranching is a good solution, but we would ask that that stealthing be affirmed by the commission by making those findings.
Okay, thank you. So personally, I don't support the rebranching at the existing height because I just in looking at it, I'm looking at my other screen, but I have the figure up, Jonathan, that you had shown recently, page 16 of 17, or page 15 of 17 of the staff report. And in my mind, it's going to look kind of like a box on a stick, or maybe you would widen, branch out, some of the lower branches wider, but it's not gonna have a point like a normal tree. So I also think it's a little counterintuitive to recommend something that our city as a whole does not support through our ordinance, which would be a monopine, and that we make modifications to something that then would require us to make an exception. So my personal preference would be a new option C, which would be a standard facility. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Labonge?
And I hate to push things down the road, but could we also consider maybe having the applicant come back with, minimal variations to have the C version that we're talking about, which is basically no stealth, right? And it would be painted whatever the gray that we do. When I look at A5 and then I look at the photo with the rendering, they jump out at me differently. One looks like a tree and then one does. I liked your idea, your representation of a box on a stick. I think that's pretty good. So at the end of the day, I'm trying to think, is the box on the stick going to look better than the gray stick? And right now I can't really say. But I'm also caught by the 99% of the other jurisdictions that seem to think that the box on a stick version or the stealth version is better. It makes me wonder, did we make some decisions in the past based on some bad stealth designs that, probably aren't as bad now? I mean, I constantly will see stealths all over the place that I don't realize them. And I finally pick it out and I'm like, oh my God, look at that. I didn't even realize that. So I've got to believe that's evolved since we did that. So clearly I'm of the opinion that maybe that should be relooked at. So I would propose the applicant come back with the B version and the C version for us to consider so that we can make a decision in looking at something versus more of an abstract of what we think it will look like.
Just 1 second, Commissioner Maggio. So Jonathan, Greg, is that something that's a viable option?
Yes, I believe so. I think the ask was to come back with one revision. So now that the commission is leaning towards asking for two, I think if the applicant can pull that off by the next meeting, then that would be acceptable.
Am I allowed to chime in here?
Maybe. I'm kidding. No, please.
I mean, it seems like a waste of time for this to get punted down the road for a month just to come back with an image showing no screening on a tree. When we've got, reference points sitting right there on the hillside of other pipe mount antennas, and you can conceptualize by looking at the photo sims, removing that branching, what it's going to look like. I would prefer not to have to come back in a month just to show you a picture of a painted brown or gray or green structure. It just doesn't make sense.
Chair.
Commissioner Labonge and then Commissioner Maggio.
And for Mr. Johnson, I do appreciate your comment. I do. So so if I'm looking at view 4, so we're all looking at the same page, which is I think page 17. In the Sims version on the left, I think I know the answer. If I just stripped off all that, faux branching, that's what it looks like.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So if that's the case, to me, while neither one looks great, I think the version you're showing to me, if you told me you've got the version you're looking at right now, or take all the fake branching off, I'd take the one you're showing right now. And I think the version without it is C. We're calling that C now, I think. And then this is version, whatever we're calling it, B. I don't know. So I guess I would say if that's all it's going to look like, then I'm more of the opinion, let's just hash it out. That's, you know, do you want without it or with it? And maybe we just make that decision tonight.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mr. Maggio?
Yes. I just wanted to point out that in these photo simulations, you're looking at a green hillside. Currently, it is a brown hillside, and there is a much greater contrast between the monopine and the brown hillside. So take that into consideration. I think this photo makes it look as good as it possibly can. The other thing is, pines aren't native to our hillsides, and I don't know why they haven't created a mono oak, but it hasn't happened. So don't just go by this simulation. Go out and look at the hillside. Thank you.
So Commissioner Maggio, I mean, would it be fair though to say the picture right above on page 16 does cover that because it does have the yellow hillside? It does stick out, but I mean, does that get to what the point you're making? You're on mute, sorry.
It's bluer than the oaks. It's a unnatural color. And to make it look like a pine tree, which really doesn't go on that hillside, it would have to be much taller. So our discussion right now, we're making it look, I guess, more like an oak with larger branches around the top to hide it. But the coloring that we've seen in the past is much bluer than the sagey kinds of greens that we naturally see on our hillside. And I'm more in favor of real metal than plastic trees.
And that is something I think that the applicant can address. Commissioner Maggio, I have the history that you have with the very blue foliage, and it just not looking like a tree in a lot of ways, both the branching habit and not being conical and having blue foliage, but I know that has changed, and that the applicant can speak to that. There's actually, I think, a successful facility along Highway 24 in Orinda, near Orinda Woods, that, if you know it is, you look and you see that it is, but I think most people drive by not knowing. And that foliage is not the kind of historic, awkward, inconsistent blue so the applicant, I think, can speak to the industry's shift.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all those statements. I've seen the blue trees as well, and those are long gone. Those are old trees. Probably back when stealth techniques were originally being implemented and trying to figure out really how to successfully do it. Over the last 10 years, there's been a great deal of progress for the better.
So let me ask this question, Commissioner Maggio, if the paint scheme was better, AKA not blue, would you be then okay with it remaining a monopine / a little bit whiter?
Well, I'm happy to go over to Orinda Woods and see what that tree looks like. And I will do that this week. Still, a pine in an oak woodland or a hillside doesn't necessarily fit.
Fair. I mean, I'll say my point of view is if we were starting from scratch and this wasn't here, I would probably look at it differently. But since it's here, I'm looking at it differently. It's basically, to me, I see it as augmenting what's there to cover new equipment. If we were starting in 1994, where this started, or 2001, I would look at it differently. And Commissioner Mason brought up the point about the Reales Valley one that was really, really tall. And there were some viewpoint issues there. I think that's a different thing, but I'll be honest with you. I actually look for these because we have a running joke with my mother-in-law about whether it's real or not. So I look for them. But I'll tell you, I've driven on this road a million times. I actually didn't realize this was there. So it just tells you something right off the bat that it's, and again, I'm just giving you my viewpoint. I had no idea it was there, including the real metal. I'll call it Easter Island. That's right above it. That's what it looks like from a distance, but I still would have noticed that. So I'm happy to work with the group to get some consensus, maybe bring it back for some options, but I'm also comfortable with saying, if you can cover the new equipment with the scheme and potentially change the color, I'm also fine with that too, because it's there. That's just my 2 cents. Commissioner Heisington.
That's a helpful dialogue.
Yeah, but back to the question Commissioner Radnich asked, we would still have to, how did you phrase it, Greg? We would still have to grant an exception because we would have to acknowledge the monopine, which is flying in the face of our ordinance by simply augmenting the branches, correct?
Augmenting the branches arguably is the outcome is similar to replacing. I mean, I think that there would still be the concern about if the branches got wider to try to cover the new, larger, more numerous equipment, that you would run into the issue of it being flat topped. And so, you know, but in either case, if you are expanding the existing stealth facility, you would need to make the findings that the faux natural feature is the least intrusive means, and so make those findings. And I'm happy to share on screen the Orinda example for all to see. You're seeing Highway 24, correct?
I see him.
They're off to the right.
They jumped right out at me.
Looking for them. So what is the tell is the concrete base of those, and you can see that the exterior is irregular, and there's sufficient branches, and that's the shoulder. But this has the benefit of other pines and oaks in the background, and what we have learned is when an antenna is in the foreground and there is a dark irregular background, they tend to disappear. And it is the silhouette which announces it in any way, shape, or form, whether it is stealth or unstealth. If it's stealth, you want the silhouette to actually look like the actual natural feature that it's supposed to silhouette. And so if the commission goes with the stealthing, we would once again impose the condition that all of the antennas would have to be within that triangular conical shape, and take a bond to ensure that that is the case to be executed. Because if they're not, then they're not meeting the stealth requirement. But that is the closest example, I think, to the property that we're talking about.
And just to add to that the height of the structure being only 12 feet tall is part of the greatest challenge of creating a conical look, because you don't have the height available to create that look of structure.
And I think the point of that is what Jonathan suggested, AKA making it taller and wider to make it conical. I think we're circling back to the recommendation at the beginning. Fair, Jonathan? Okay.
That's
so
fair.
now I, to be honest with you, now I understand the reasoning for the height. It's the conical shape issue, not the, now I get it. But I'll be honest with you again, I know we've talked about this a lot. This thing is just off on its own. I don't care what you do to make it look like. It is what it is. It's just one of those, again, as Greg just put up, it's different when there are trees behind it, right? But this is a one-off. I can live with metal. I can live with this. It's just because it's been there and it's just there. If we were starting anew, I'd look at it differently. I'm just telling you, I can go in either direction and make the findings. I just trying to make it the least difficult. So we, again, not to keep making Mr. Johnson come back and or for us to do this, but in my opinion, whatever is the easiest solution and we stick to what the ordinance is. I don't want to leave our ordinance. There's a reason it was passed. It is, that's what we're working from. So I'll be quiet. Commissioner Mason?
I agree with Commissioner Labong. I can make the similar finding. I do agree that we have an ordinance, but this is kind of treated differently. We don't come back when we have an addition or something to a residence or a building, which is we're in conformance. You know, we don't come back and revisit the whole issue from scratch. We look at it just, you know, what they're doing. And if the, you know, if all they're doing is adding some equipment and it extends out an additional 18 inches and the closest viewing spot is 1,000 feet away or 1,000 yards away, I don't have, for me, that's, you know, that's not intrusive. You know, if you noticed it before, if you didn't notice it before, you're not going to notice it now. And I don't see them doing anything that's going to make it substantially more noticeable. And I do think we, you know, however we go, we should be able to resolve this one tonight.
Any further comments? Which leaves open where we're going to go with this. For those folks who want to get this settled tonight, I guess I'll leave the floor open for a motion on that front. If we want the applicant to come back with different options, illustrations, etc., I'll leave that floor open too. But we can't just, I mean, we can't just stop talking and it goes away. So we got to go one way or the other. Vice Chair Radnich.
I personally think we should make a decision tonight so that we can bring a resolution back on July 19th. After hearing from the applicant tonight in response to potentially showing additional renderings or designs, I do think that's a waste of his resources. I think we can visualize what that would look like for any of the options, right? A, B, well, either the proposed, which is we see in front of us, option A, option B, potential new option C, or potential new option D, which is same height, but more branching. So I'm not in favor of asking the applicant to bring anything back. I'm just in favor of recommending or providing a resolution for staff to bring back next time and making a decision. And I'll just say it, my decision would be option C.
Thank you. Any other viewpoints? Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, again, I'm not a fan of option C. I mean, and I do agree not to ask the applicant to bring a rendering back because we can just look right up the hill and know what it's going to look like. And me, I personally would rather have the branches on what's existing there. And I, you know, at this point, I could recommend throw out a motion there that we just approve what's before us. I mean, we're talking 18 inches. If we go back and ask for a monopine that tries to give a conical shape and redo the branches to cover all the equipment, we're going to get a taller monopine, and then it will stick out more. So I just say, maybe we just approve what's before us tonight.
Can I ask a question? When you say what's before us tonight, additional
Which is-
equipment and it stays as is
Just-
with the
yeah.
coverage?
Yeah, and not go back trying to add branches, because I think that to get that conical shape, it's going to grow taller than 12 feet. And then it will, then I agree with Commissioner Maggio, it will start to stick out more. Let's just leave it as it is and just let the equipment be added to the structure that's out there.
Okay.
So I guess that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, fair enough. Everybody know what that motion and second were? Just want to make sure. Okay. I'll go ahead and, I'm sorry, was that a question? No.
I'm out.
Okay, please.
I just wanted to say that I'm in agreement with Commissioner saying that I can compromise as long as we're not adding any additional artificial features.
Okay. So just for the record, additional equipment is added to the existing structure with no additional fake foliage. Is that a good summary, Commissioner Heising?
Affirmative.
And one quick question of Jonathan and Greg. If we do that, there isn't anything additional we need to do to approve the project, correct? Or do we need to do anything else? Does this need to be an exception, et cetera, or just a straightforward motion and approval?
It would be so the equipment is not, the natural feature is not expanding. So there would not be an exception. It would just be a motion, possibly on consent calendar for the next meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we've got it straight away. So I'll go around and take the vote. Commissioner Heising.
Aye.
Commissioner Labong.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio.
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich.
No.
Okay. Chair Farzan, aye. So we have a 5-1 vote. And I guess I should ask, is this a 14-day appeal on this matter?
Following adoption of the resolution.
Following adoption, right? So it's coming back on the consent calendar for July 19th, correct?
I can prepare it sooner.
Okay.
At the next available meeting, and I think that is the 6th. Let me double check the calendar. That would be Tuesday, July 6th.
Thank you. I hope we have a quorum then. Just people are finally traveling again. You never know. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 6B, L04-19, HDP 17-19, and PP 45-19, Cancer Support Society. And I believe Sarah is here with the staff report. Let me ask real quickly before Sarah gets started. Does anybody need a quick break? Because we usually take one around 9. Are you people comfortable moving forward right now? Commissioner Mason?
Well, Sarah, what's the read on this? Because my guess is this may go for a while, or do we just not have many comments on it?
It looks like there are a couple of attendees. I don't know if everyone will make a public comment, but.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick 6-minute break until 8:50? I'll make an executive decision.
Sounds good.
Thank you. wait just another moment for Commissioner Labong.
I'm here.
All right.
Thank you.
I think with that, I will bring the meeting back into session and hand it over to Sarah.
Excellent. Thank you, commissioners. So this evening, we're reviewing again the cancer support community, which you've seen once before. So just to give you a little bit of a refresher and reorient you, we are in the west end of town near the Lafayette Reservoir. We are adjacent to what's known as the De Silva property, which is a 62-acre vacant parcel. This is also a vacant parcel. And the story poles have been installed or were installed several weeks ago. So hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at those. The scope hasn't changed since you've seen it last. This is still a vacant parcel in a low density residential zoning district. The parcel is 5.75 acres. Proposed building is 12,000 square feet with a height of 33 feet, 3 inches. They're providing 50 parking spaces and 6 bike parking stalls, removing 14 trees and replacing them with 44, both of which are in excess of the code requirements. The land use is a community assembly and education activity, which the Planning Commission previously identified as the use, and which is allowed to be requested for a land use permit within the LR10 zoning district. So in terms of the review process, as you know, this came before the Planning Commission once before at an introductory meeting where the commission directed the matter to go to the Design Review Commission and the Transportation and Circulation Commission to evaluate the project based on their expertise. And we're back here at the Planning Commission to evaluate the land use permit and take final action on the project, as well as the CEQA document. For each of these hearings, a notice of public hearing was mailed to 107 recipients. So that includes the surrounding property owners, as well as a list of interested parties. During the Planning Commission review, there were several requests as related to Design Review and Transportation and Circulation Commission. The commission requested Design Review obviously look at design considerations, colors and materials, making sure that the landscaping was wildfire friendly, to evaluate whether the pervious paving and parking lot materials, to reduce the irrigation as much as possible and follow the water efficient landscape ordinance. And then also as related to Transcirc, evaluation of the bicycle and pedestrian safety in the area. So comments received from DRC and Transcirc. Design Review Commission was supportive of the project, felt it was well designed and well cited. There was a request for visual screening for the parking area. So while they thought that the parking was established, it was sort of good site planning to establish it in the front so that there's reduced grading, reduced impervious surfaces. It is the least aesthetically pleasing portion of the project, and so requested additional screening. They also requested a condition of approval be added to for the applicant to establish a sign plan or comprehensive sign plan, including wayfinding for the campus, as they called it. Additionally, Transportation and Circulation Commission had they had two different sets of comments. One was sort of considerations for the applicant surrounding comfort and convenience, which related to increasing the amount of parking as much as possible, increasing the amount of EV parking as much as possible, providing clarity around the car share drop-off area, providing a direct pedestrian access along the driveway, so widening the driveway, and then a reservoir connection to the trails there if possible, and then also providing for a shuttle service for any large events that they're planning to have. So those were sort of considerations for the applicant. And then there was a separate set of recommendations related to safety, and those were more specific and specifically seeking direction from the city engineer during construction document review. So that's related to the length of the turn pocket, making sure there's enough room to slow down before turning, whether or not median modifications are needed in order to provide additional safety, reducing the speed limit from 45 to 35, further west, widening the bike lane as much as possible. So those are, you'll find those in a project-specific condition of approval for consideration with engineering during construction documents. So this evening, we're looking at, the Planning Commission will be focusing on the land use. So we're looking at compatibility of the use itself, parking, potential impacts and mitigations to those impacts. We're looking at the hillside development permit, the tree permit, and grading permits. And more specifically, when we're looking at those, we're looking at offsite visibility, privacy impacts, and then also the maintenance of the natural setting. And then finally, the Planning Commission will also take action on the CEQA document, or the Environmental Quality Act document, California Environmental Quality Act. A mitigating negative declaration has been prepared, which includes a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, or known as MMRP. And those specific, essentially that reduces the potential for significant impacts to less than significant with mitigations. And those mitigations are around biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, as well as transportation. And those are all outlined in the document, I think it's chapter 5 in the MND. So this evening, staff is able to make all of the required findings as articulated in the draft resolution. And staff is recommending the Commission review the proposed project, as well as the mitigated negative declaration, conduct the public hearing, adopt the draft Planning Commission Resolution 2021-4, approving the mitigation monitoring reporting program, as well as the project subject to conditions. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have any questions for Sarah? Wow, you don't get to see that too often. That's good news. I have one then. So for the conditions of approval, number 6, which is normal construction days or Monday through Saturday. So here, I think I brought this up before on traffic issues, pedestrians, bicyclists, etc. Saturday is one of the busiest, if not the busiest day at the reservoir. Have we kept that in mind with respect to construction traffic going in and out of that area with bicyclists, pedestrians, and people driving in and out of the reservoir, not the wisest way that they normally do it? So it's just a very long-winded way of saying, is there something else we can keep in mind with respect to minimizing traffic, construction truck traffic on Saturdays going in and out of there, considering the amount of things that go on in front of the reservoir?
Sure, that's certainly at the Commission's discretion to adjust those hours of operation, hours of construction.
Okay. And has that been done before? I don't want to start anything new. It's just because of the location right next to the reservoir just concerns me.
Yep, definitely. We've modified it for school times before. We've modified it to not allow Saturdays before, or altering the hours so that it doesn't hit traffic.
Okay. Great. That's the only question that I had there. Any other questions? All right, I'll open the floor. Thank you, Sarah. I'll open up the floor to the applicant. I don't know if that's going to be Mr. Pickett again or someone else.
No, hi, it's Rob Tufel. I was going to do a very brief presentation, so I'll just need to share my screen. All right. Right. Okay, can everybody see that? Great, fantastic. First of all, I want to thank the Commission so much for going through this very long process with us and all your great questions. I just really wanted to take a few minutes to step back and talk about the big picture. Obviously, the Commission, as we know, you're involved in the details and ask a lot of questions, and your job is to be in the weeds. But I think for this project, I don't want to lose sight of what this project brings to the community and the value that we bring to the community. So basically, what is the need? Every hour of every day, 20 people in California will hear the words, "You have cancer." That means in the past 2 hours, since this meeting's been taking place, 40 people have heard those words. I actually spoke to somebody probably an hour beforehand, before this meeting, whose son was diagnosed with cancer. This is an issue that won't go away, and there's a great need among cancer patients and their families for the type of services that we provide. And what do we do? I think as an organization, you couldn't want a better organization to come to your community, frankly. We have been serving the community for over 30 years. We have a proven track record. We provide programs at no cost. We have a measurable positive impact on what we do. We're financially strong. We have solid partnerships with all the hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, local and national businesses. And we also get the highest ratings on charity, GuideStar and Charity Navigator, 2 sites that rate nonprofits. And what we do is help people who are facing one of the most difficult times in their lives to become healthier and live longer and live better. That is the big picture, and that is what we bring to this community. But I think even more than that, and even more than a building, our motto is community is stronger than cancer. We define community by what we do. We bring community to the location we're in, and we will do that in Lafayette as well. And these are the people in our community who benefit from the services. We heard the very, very passionate testimonials. I won't read all of them again, but we hear those every single day. And these are the people who will be impacted by these years of discussion about what the building will look like and the specs and transportation. But these are the people who in our community who will actually receive these services and be impacted. And all this is to say that we find the draft resolutions and the proposed conditions acceptable to us as drafted by Sarah. And what we would like to see tonight is approval of this project so we can bring this service to this community and focus on the big picture and focus on the needs of the community and cancer patients. And of course, we are available to answer any questions. Our experts are here. So if you do have any additional questions, we are happy to answer those questions. And I thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Labong?
My question, it actually goes to your comment, and I appreciate your comment. My concern with it, and I think I would like the applicant maybe to talk to it, is it will delay construction, which will delay this opening. So I guess what I would ask the applicant, and that's if it went, I'm not saying you're going to propose it, but is there a viable way to, this is probably one of your consultants possibly would answer, to maybe do any kind of limited heavy truck work on Saturday that you could conceive of that could be potentially added as a condition of approval or something, so that we could be mindful of that. However, not at the expense of your construction budget. I mean, your construction timing. So that's my question. Is there a way that you think of? And if the answer is no, just say it.
Okay, I'll answer that question. Our preference would be not to have any limitations on construction on Saturdays. Our construction crews, our general contractor, typically they work 5 days a week anyhow. There would be occasions, for instance, if we're forced to complete some work for the winter crush, rain's coming in, you've got water quality control limitations, you have things you have to finish up, and there may be an occasion that we do work a Saturday. But in the course of construction, which could be 12 to 18 months, there isn't going to be that many Saturdays that we would be working. So I think it's a small concern. There could be, some cities have a Saturday work permit thing. And, some kind of a control or monitoring or, requirement that we would have to come down and go to the planning department or the engineering department to get the authority to work on that Saturday might be a method. And again, in that process of granting the permit to work on a Saturday, they might have, requirements for a flagman or some kind of, traffic safety issue, but still allow us to work on Saturday. I think it's important to have that flexibility, although I don't think we would utilize it very often. So we'd like to keep it a minimal impact on our opportunity to complete the building. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason?
I'd just like to piggyback on what Commissioner Labong asked, because there's two separate issues. One is working Saturday and the other is just big trucks. As I see it, the only big trucks you have are earthwork, deliveries, and concrete pours. And most unless I'm missing something. And what I don't want, and those I think we can work around with some sort of permit. Since this is not in a high density neighborhood, if you've got framers, working on a Saturday to get caught up or something like that, I can't see that disturbing anybody. Is my assessment of that correct?
Yeah, basically the light construction workers, the carpenters, people working on electricians, if we're getting into finish work, those guys are going to show up on the job in the morning and they're going to leave in the afternoon. So we're not having traffic in and out during the day. If we are in one of these construction crunches and have to get concrete poured, because a storm's coming in, we might have concrete trucks coming in and out. So those would be elements where traffic, pedestrian, bicycle safety conflicts would be pertinent, and that's something that could be evaluated. Again, that might be managed by simple traffic control, a flagman or whatever. They're going to stop cars and they can stop bicycles and assure safety. So there are some mechanisms, and perhaps that could be left up to the engineering department. That if we are going to work Saturday, we get a permit, and based on the type of work we're doing, they can determine what safety measures might be needed to ensure the safety of the pedestrians and bicyclists.
Commissioner Mason, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the project has the greatest amount of flexibility possible, because unforeseen things can occur. I just want to make sure we have a mechanism in advance.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? I have one more question. I noticed a response to 3B about a pedestrian connection to the reservoir you're not in favor of because you're worried about parking spaces being taken. Are you open to having the connection to the reservoir? Because I thought when we had the prior meeting, it was open because you would have members of the community and also members of the cancer support community to be able to connect to the reservoir through a pedestrian walkway. But now it seems it's the opposite. So I'm trying to get a sense of where you are on that.
Yeah, I think, conceptually, the idea has some merit. And I think that would have been, comments that were made. But in further thought, we do run the risk of somebody who's not associated with the cancer support community, there's a member or an employee or whatever, thinking, the Lafayette Reservoir parking lot is a hassle, it's full, I got to pay for it, and say, I'm just going to go park here and walk up the back way. So we are concerned. We think it's a valid concern. We would be open to making or facilitating a connection. It would require, obviously, the cooperation of East Bay Mud. There is no trail on their property right now, so they'd have to say, we're going to build a trail. And we would like to have some time in operating and see how that might impact. See if how our parking is working out, how our traffic flow is going. And we would like, operational time to evaluate, whether or not that would have a negative impact on our operation. Our first thing is what we do, and we need to be able to accommodate the people who are benefiting from our services before we accommodate a hiker. So we're shifting priorities there to our operation before we accommodate hikers in the neighborhood. They do have, everyone has the alternative, which is there today, to drive up to the Lafayette Reservoir and access all the trails. So the back door that we would provide is really, I think, less important than our function.
Right, but what about for your members? I think that was part of the communication, was your members would have a walkway to get to the reservoir.
We can, they can get up there right now. What's needed would be East Bay Mud to build a trail on their property for our members to continue the hike. So, we'd have to go through East Bay Mud's processes, whatever their recreational planning department is, and probably board of directors, and they'd have to put the money up to pay for it. We certainly would not be amenable to putting up the money to create a trail that's not there on East Bay Mud's property. So, you know, there's a benefit, but, you know, our position would be on it that, you know, assessing the operation first would be most important. We do have 4 acres that's open, you know, to our people anyhow to walk around right now. And they can go up the hill and be up in the gazebo area and the garden, you know, that we're going to ultimately have. So there's a lot of opportunity for them to have that outdoor experience on our property, on our 5 acres, or 5.75 acres. So it just the importance of that connection is a couple notches down from our perspective.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions for the applicant? All right, Mr. Heising.
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering if you could walk us through some of the additional screening that was added for the parking lot that came out of the Transcert committee comments.
Yeah, so what we did is our civil engineer evaluated the area on the north side of the lower parking lot, and we were determined that we could build a berm in that area up to 3 feet. And based on the angle from Mount Diablo Boulevard looking up, the berm would screen most of the vehicles in their entirety. And we may need to supplement a little bit, but they wanted us to, the most significant barrier to the visibility of the vehicles there is the berm, and we can build the berm. We've determined that that's a possibility. So our final plans will include a berm in that area. And I say it gets up to 3 feet. It's not 3 feet along the entire length, and then we will supplement it with, you know, the appropriate vegetation. So I think it'll be an effective almost 100% screen of the vehicles.
Okay, so that's coming in a future landscape plan. I was just scrolling through the renderings here. I was trying to find it.
I think that, yeah, that is not in our, we did not develop a plan. We did a feasibility study. I didn't bring those exhibits tonight, but we did a feasibility study to determine that it was possible. And I think in the conditions of approval, it says something to that effect. Oh, there it is right there. So there's the engineers.
That's the way you're going to address it.
That's how the berm will work. And then there's a cross section of it. I don't know who brought that up, but thank you. Well, that might have been in the letter that we provided to you a couple. Yeah, it was in the letter we provided you a couple of weeks ago. That was included in your planning commission packets. So you can see how the berm is, you know, peaks out at about 3 feet, and considering that Mount Diablo Boulevard is at a lower elevation looking up, they won't even see the roofs of the cars.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, open the floor for public comment.
So if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, or *9 if you're calling in. I will let Janet Grinstead in. Hey, Janet, you are in the meeting if you'd like to unmute.
I'm unmute. I spoke once before, and I'm have been a client of CSC, and on behalf of past, current, and future clients, I can't thank you enough for supporting this project. This new facility will support us so well. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Kathy Merchant will be promoted.
So let's see, hold on, did I stop? Okay. So I wanted to say first, thinking about the very first meeting with the Design Review Commission, I wanted to compliment the commissioners, and particularly Farshad, for what a sensitive facilitation that was. I remember, Fashad, you saying you were the last person that wanted to cut anybody off. But you hoped people would stay in their 3 minutes. And then it was really a lovely meeting because people do feel so strongly about this. I wore the Hope Walk t-shirt, both around the reservoir and downtown. And it's amazing how many people, oh, I know why you can't see me. I have my blue tape over the camera. I always forget that. And several people stopped me to say, boy, I think this is just a wonderful thing for our community. In terms of the trucks, I do want to point out that in contrast to all the housing that's going on in town, that this location is right by the freeway. And I think that kind of challenge of traffic and trucks is minimal at this site. In terms of bikes, there has never been a problem with Orchard Nursery or Oakwood, which gets an awful lot of traffic during Saturday. And I think this project has been so sensitively designed that I think it's going to continue not to be a problem. In terms of access to the reservoir, my personal opinion is that's not a great idea. For one thing, there's a meditation area right up at the top there. And if you have traffic coming, people walking traffic in and out of the reservoir, I think that's disruptive to the purpose of that. In terms of the clients who are there, if they want to go to the reservoir, they can just drive up. I think they're looking for a quiet, contemplative campus, whether it's at the top or in the gardens below. And so I think I would have extreme reservations for that. And so I wholeheartedly support this. At the last time I spoke, Farsad, you said I should be writing the PR for Lafayette. And I just want to continue to say that to start with the veterans and then moving on down to the reservoir and on downtown to the library and the new campus of Las Trampas and on to the hotel. I just think this is another incredibly fabulous addition to Lafayette. And if I can just say a personal note, and I hope it's appropriate, Farsad, your remodel is a lovely companion to this project. Great. It looks absolutely fabulous. I don't email you that, but I don't have your email, but it looks, that whole area, that I think this is just going to be a lovely, lovely addition. Community garden there too. So I wholeheartedly support this project. Thanks.
Thank you. The city should definitely send you a check.
Send it to Las Trampas.
Thank you. Again, very, very well said. I think we've got Diane Barbera has her hand up.
I just let Conrad Reese in.
Oh, Conrad.
Conrad, you are muted if you'd like.
You're on mute.
Good evening. I would just like to add my support as a long-term resident of Lafayette and a member of the cancer support community that this is a project that is totally appropriate, well needed, and will not impact the city in an adverse way. I've lived through the Woodbury 1 and the Woodbury 2 with trucks, and I'm still alive. So I think this will be of minimal impact, and I would hope you would support it unqualifiedly.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and let Diane Barbera in.
Hi, everybody. I will keep this short, and I always hate following Kathy Merchant because she always is so eloquently spoken. But I've lived over here in Acalanes Valley for 37 years, and I've been through all of this construction from Oakwood all the way through. Right here by the freeway is the staging area for the trucks for right now for Lennar Homes. It's always been well organized and handled very carefully. Saturdays are, in my opinion, not the busiest at the reservoir. I think Sunday is a lot busier. And I think that there won't be any construction on Sunday, so I don't see it as a problem. I wholeheartedly to support this project. I think this is just another jewel of the city. And there are so many people that need cancer support community. And many of us are right here in Lafayette. And that's all I'm going to say is I hope you will approve this so that we can get the ball rolling and get this built. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've got Brant's got his hand up now.
Yep. If you would like to make a comment, go ahead and raise your hand. Brant is entering the meeting now.
There I am. Thanks. This is a great project. It provides a service that is necessary and important. And the building is beautiful, and you ought to approve it.
All right, straight to the point. Thank you, Brant.
Not seeing any other hands raised at this time. One last call. If you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. There are no hands raised.
All right, well, we will bring it back to the applicants. I'm assuming you don't want to rebut those comments.
No, we're very, very happy with what was said. Thank you.
Okay, any closing comments?
I just like to say that, you know, I think that this project has been well vetted through the various commissions in Lafayette. And, you know, we like the way Sarah has analyzed this, and we would encourage the approval of the resolution as it's written without additional baggage to it, which I don't think will really help the project or Lafayette. But, you know, we've had a discussion, a couple items. So if someone wants to modify it, we'll listen to that. But basically, we're happy with what it is, and we'd like to see your evening end with an approval in short stead. Thank you.
Thank you. I will bring it back to the commission. I'll open the floor for any comments from the commissioners. Vice Chair Radnich.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the staff report, the presentation by the applicant, presentation by staff. I will just kind of focus on two things to minimize the discussion. I think it's a great project. I appreciate all the community support for it as well in the last hearing that we saw, and this one. Condition of approval 15 regarding the MMRP. I know Fair and Pierce did provide a response to a comment I had last time, but I think my comment was maybe lost in translation. So Sarah or staff, I would just maybe recommend for condition 15 that in regard to trans 2, mitigation measure trans 2, that just double check the wording of when the mitigation measure is being implemented. It says construction, but it's an operation related mitigation measure. Minor, it doesn't change me being able to make a finding. And then I also would echo Ms. Kathy Merchant's comment regarding no connection to the reservoir. I think the tranquility of the site and the intent of the services that the additional land and gazebo and pathways that the project is providing, I think that can easily be lost with a connection to the reservoir. Furthermore, that connection isn't 100% on the applicant's property. So those are my two comments. Totally 100% in support of the project, and I can make all the findings. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Commissioner Heising, and then Commissioner Labong to follow.
Yes, thank you. Just adding to what Commissioner Radnich just mentioned about the trail, I too agree. If if there's a focus of having a meditation area up there, I wouldn't want to be up there attempting to meditate and have people traipsing through trying to get up to through a trail up to the reservoir. And then additionally, East Bay Mud operates the parking lot. They own the reservoir. So any parking, if there was a trail, I doubt East Bay Mud would be willing to pay for construction of a trail to connect to this parcel to then have people park there and get away from paying the parking fee on their facility. So they'd be losing revenue, plus they'd be having more expenditures to build a trail. So I doubt East Bay Mud would be amenable to that. And then lastly, I agree with the last speaker. I think this is a great project and we should approve it. And I'll end with that.
Commissioner Labong, then Commissioner Maggio.
Mine's very short. I'm ready to vote. I can make all the findings. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Maggio.
Well, I don't have much to add other than it was a good, solid project at our first meeting. It's been further refined. I really like the berm solution for covering the parking. I think that's going to be really successful. Excellent project. Let's get the shovel in the ground.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason.
I'd just like to second Commissioner Labong, and I'd also like to compliment the applicant on showing up well prepared and with the community support behind them. That's not common for the projects that we see.
And I will conclude it by saying I really love the design where we ended up. I think the berm really helps that, and it covers the last issue with showing the cars, and I can make the findings, and I'm ready to move forward on that front. And I will open the floor for a motion, and I'm looking at Vice Chair Radnich, who is a professional at making motions.
Okay, I'll go for it.
See, told you.
Well, you just queued me up. I can't, you're the chair. I can't tell you no.
Oh, yes, you can. Trust me.
Just kidding. I'd like to make a motion on this project. I would like to move that we adopt PC Resolution 2021-04, including the mitigated negative declaration and the MMRP pursuant to CEQA, and approving the project subject to conditions.
Second.
I'll add one with your clarifying point that you made to Sarah on the MMRP, correct?
Yeah, it doesn't change the wording of condition of approval 15, right. Just more of a note. Yeah, so thank you.
Right. Yeah. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Labong. I will take the vote. Commissioner Hoisington.
Aye.
Commissioner Labong.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio.
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich.
Aye.
And Chair Farzan, aye. We have a 6-0 vote in favor. And I should also add 14 days to appeal the decision, because I get yelled at when I don't say that.
Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much. We are thrilled. I'm going to go have a glass of champagne. Thank you.
Oh, sure. You get that champagne. I'm kidding. Have a good evening. That was our last item. So I'm going to bring it back. Do we have any reports from commissioners? Vice Chair Radnich.
I can give one. GPAC update. So staff has still been doing a lot. We somehow did drop down to one meeting a month, but I don't think that has caught up with staff yet. I think they're still doing a lot. But just a couple updates. Most recently on our June 15th meeting, Staff gave a presentation on the opportunity sites and an evaluation. So this was a combination of input received during the session number 4, the workshop in mid-May, as well as any input that's been received on the Plan Lafayette website. And so that information is all available. The staff reports and the attachments are all available for the public to review. So I would just really encourage anyone on Planning Commission to take a look specifically at the June 15th staff report. I think it just does a really good job of kind of just informing everybody of what is going on and where we are in the process. One of the attachments, there's a couple matrices that have been provided. And so staff has gone through and identified, based on community input for opportunity sites and the workshop input, kind of breaking them down into 4 categories: high, medium, low, and none. Basically meaning like there's different evaluation criteria and what are the, I don't know, not chances of these sites being developed, but the ease by which they can be identified for additional housing. So that's pretty interesting in attachment. It's called All Opportunity Site Summary by Location. I would check that one out. And then we also discussed just really the need to continue public outreach. So I'm sure you guys all I received mine maybe over the weekend or late last week, a flyer in the mail. GPAC is kind of green and white. And then still always pointing people back to the website would be helpful. Then during June 20, that's tomorrow, the Taste of Lafayette tour. It's going to go on strong. And I believe, Sarah, right, that staff is going to have a table out along the way there promoting GPAC. And also on June 30th, this is the important one to get out there. June 30th is going to be an in-person 4-hour workshop from 4 to 8 at the library. And that'll be an opportunity for people to come in person to give input, get information. There's going to be a lot of different tables set up with specific topics, but people can ask questions. It could be really dialed in. It could be a really generic question, but that's going to be an actual live event. And then lastly, I believe staff and the Youth Commission representative are working on a youth-oriented outreach event as well. Anything I missed, Sarah? I see you're nodding, but I feel like there was a lot in the last meeting.
Yeah, I know you did a great job.
Okay.
That was a fantastic summary. Thank you. Do we have any other commissioners' reports? All right. Do we have a planning director's report?
Three brief items. First, Commissioner Mason asked about any direction or timeframe for going back to in-person meetings. The governor's executive order, while California has opened up, the allowance for conducting teleconference meetings like this Zoom webinar persists through September. And so currently, administrative staff is working on protocols to open up and host in-person city council meetings, planning commission meetings, et cetera, as well as developing a hybrid model whereby there is now a desire on the part of the public to be able to attend in person or be at home and be able to offer their comments via Zoom or another platform without having to find a sitter, come down to the meeting room in order to. So we are trying to accommodate that. How that is done remains to be seen, but they are working on that effort. And so we'll know more in the weeks to come. But certainly, I think September is a reasonable target to be expecting that we'll be back in person. And it may just be those of us here in attendance, physically sitting in the community hall, with the public attending via Zoom, as has been the case over the last year, but we'll see. The council at last Monday night's meeting approved our work plan, much as you saw it a few weeks prior. So 10 state mandatory items, including the housing element update, annual progress report, etc. 2 health and safety related issues. One being looking at the tree ordinance and reconciling that or right sizing it to the current high fire risk persistent condition and the efforts of Firewise. There is a provision in the Muni Code, the current tree ordinance, that does allow for an exception for fuel management. And we met with the fire district and established a protocol whereby their inspector, if inspecting and notes a recommended or necessary removal, they will take a photo, send us an email to our generic planning account, so all staff will be able to access that. And then we'll know when that moves forward. We'll acknowledge it and that it's permissible under the ordinance, so that all 3 parties are in the loop: the property owner, the fire district, the city. And then if we do get calls from the public about a removal, we'll have access to that information and not have to send the code enforcement officer out to investigate. Currently working with CAL FIRE, met with CAL FIRE regarding a requirement under AB 2911 to identify areas of construction, homes, clusters 30 or more with 1 point of ingress, egress. And we will identify those, convey those to CAL FIRE. They will evaluate them and make recommendations on how to mitigate the potential risk of that single point of ingress, egress. If an evacuation, people are trying to get out of that area and first responders were trying to get in, et cetera. So we're working on compliance with that. And that was also one of the items on the work plan. So they did add some items, including the environmental task force working on an electrification ordinance to transition away from natural gas and towards both electrification of appliances, but also for green, for electric vehicles. And looking at the density bonus ordinance and the appropriate hearing body on that. So those were also similarly prioritized. I'll send out the list in its entirety for your reading pleasure. And then another item on last week's City Council agenda was RENA. So officially, as of April 25, ABAG issued draft RENA allocations. Lafayette's stayed at 2114. You'll recall in the fall, it was 1661. And so that 28% bump related to a change, not in the methodology, but in the baseline. So in December, MTC ABAG added an additional 10 strategies to Plan Bay Area 2050, on which the RENA allocation is based. And in so doing, reinforced or doubled down on access to high opportunity areas, of which La Miranda, all of La Miranda is a high opportunity area, as well as proximity to transit. And so those factors were essentially two of 3 factors that the RENA is based on, and then going back and prioritizing those yet again in Plan Bay Area, increase the baseline upon which the RENA allocation was made. So our number jumped roughly 28%. And one of the strategies that was added was housing on public lands, and our understanding is that included the BART station, notwithstanding that it's in a very high fire hazard severity zone. So the council last Monday night understanding that the deadline for appealing arena allocation is July 9, and they have one meeting between now and then. They asked staff to prepare materials, but didn't commit to submitting an appeal, but just to be prepared to do so. And so Diana Elrod and I have been working with a subcommittee of Mayor Kandel and Councilmember Gina Dawson, working on that. So that's what I had.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Greg? Commissioner Labong?
On the hybrid model, could if you guys are working on that work plan, I brought this up before, trying to be mindful that everyone has a right to speak at any meeting, but I do think it is important that everybody else knows where everyone who's speaking is coming from, proximity wise, not exact address, but do you live or work in Lafayette? And if you do or you don't, I think that should be mandatory or encouraged to be shared. Again, not exact address, but you know, if you have a specific bend and you're living in Southern California and this is your mission, fine, just share that. So I don't know, Greg, is that something that could be worked into that hybrid model? Some idea on how to deal with that?
Well, I think when the chair calls for public speakers, that could be one of the questions is, please state your name for the record and whether you live or work in Lafayette. Legally, the city attorney advises that we cannot require that as a precondition to allowing them to speak, but simply the request, I think almost all people will offer that information. And if they don't, or forget to, certainly they're available for questions after they make their statements, and we can ask that. A commissioner could ask that question.
Okay. So maybe part of
And I should still add, they still don't have to answer that, even if a commissioner asks them. I mean, it's something, as Greg said, I think most people are willing to answer that question generally, but they're not required to.
I think that's answering it though.
Fair enough. I'm just saying, like, even if we ask, it doesn't change the
I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you. I think just that active policy of maybe that would come from you as the chair, and then anyone else could ask. And if they don't, they don't. That's fine. I'm good with that.
Yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think we know the topics where that's going to be an issue. So I understand where that's coming from. Absolutely. Commissioner Mason, I believe.
Thank you, Greg, for looking into the various options as we go forward. Would it be possible for you to, reach out to your compatriots at some of the other cities, Walnut Creek, Contra Costa County planning departments? Because I'd like to have, however we proceed going forward with meetings, to be comparable to what other cities are doing, so that there's kind of a general consensus of how we handle meetings rather than having us be an outlier.
Yeah, I can share that with the admin team that's working on it. As of Wednesday, Jeff Heyman, communications analyst for the last 3 years, he is retiring. His can't say replacement, he's irreplaceable. His successor, Suzanne Igerly, started today, and by all accounts, she's going to be a terrific asset to the city. So she'll be part of that, and I will mention that to her. Our experience is that Lafayette goes above and beyond what a lot of other jurisdictions do, so that may be the case again. But certainly understanding what other communities are doing and implementing best practices that are out there, if we can take from those communities. Yes.
We will not be the 1%ers for the monopines. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Come on, people, have some sense of humor here. I'm kidding. So thank you. That's a very detailed report. I really appreciate that. I know we have one other thing I'm going to backtrack to ask a volunteer for July 9th ARC. Anybody available on that date?
I can do.
Commissioner Labong,
Yep.
ARC, July 9th.
And we're still doing it virtual, right?
Correct.
And okay, because I do have a 8:30, and I think we were doing it. Maybe we just do it kind of in real-time emails, but it's not at a specific time. As long as I can get around one meeting, I'm good to go.
Jonathan's been open to moving the timing too if it requires a Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm in.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from commissioners or from planning director and or Sarah, who's still sitting there quietly working hard? I'll say no. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Have a great rest of the week. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.